How do you find happiness, find fulfillment? It has to be in the little details, not in, maybe something too abstract or too big, too heroic. It's the heroic is the daily life.
Everyone, welcome to Fulfillment Project. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Chris Spellman, a total specimen we have today. We're talking University of Notre Dame, Boston College, incredible marketing expert, and also an award-winning published author with his wife. So we've got so much in store for you today. Let's start first things first. Chris, welcome to the show. Where are you calling in from today?
So I am in northern New Jersey, and thanks for having me on, Andy.
Chris, northern New Jersey. So I don't know New Jersey. Is that by the shore or where is? I know Jersey Shore from the reality TV show.
Right. So yeah, the state is basically North Jersey, Central Jersey, South Jersey, and then Jersey Shore is sort of its own category. But I'm basically like a suburb of New York City, if that makes sense.
I love that. Okay, good to know. So by train, how long to the city?
45 minutes to an hour, usually.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so I want to get into your work in marketing. I want to get into your book. What do you say? Let's start with your book. It's just so fascinating. So you've got a trilogy of dystopian novels. One of them, A Nation of Tyrants, won first place in the CMA Book Awards in 23. Just take us to the beginning of this project, Chris. Why are you writing a trilogy on a dystopian society? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, so actually the dystopian piece came second. So so we talk about the inner conflict and the outer conflict. So the inner conflict is basically like what the characters are up to, kind of a little bit of a love story that's in there, and kind of just what the conflict is within the journey of the main character, and I'll get into a little bit of the plot as well. But the outer conflict, meaning the dystopian world, what's going on politically, kind of all that stuff came second. So basically the genesis of the first novel is actually like a month after we were married. My wife and I were married.
No way.
This is going back. I mean, we've been married 16 years at this point. So
16 beautiful years.
Yeah, exactly. It has been wonderful. 16 years ago, approximately, we were just married. We had less responsibilities, no kids yet, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you do but write a novel? And so that's kind of what happened. Was like we had a first draft within 3 months after we were married. Lots of, we we definitely had free time on our hands, which we don't have so much now. But yeah, so we got this draft together, and it had no dystopian elements. It was just strictly actually a little bit superhero-ish, to be honest. So it was like kind of like the battle between good and evil, and angels and demons even, and just like kind of like superhero type style stuff.
Yeah.
And then from there, kind of over the years, so it took 12 years from the moment it was completed as a draft to the moment it was published. And those are 12 long years of us figuring out, like, how do you actually make this good?
Yeah.
Because it was like, okay, I guess, and its original genesis or original inception, but to take it from, okay to what we consider to be, quite worth reading, for other people to read, it took a long time. So we kind of just refined and read books about how to write, and talked to editors and talked to people that know what they're talking about, and had people review it and read it, and et cetera, over 12 years. And then got to the point where in 2021, we ready to publish. So
I love the concept, because that's real life. And that's what makes the reader connect to a book like yours. Is that's my life. I've got internal conflicts going on. Simultaneously, there's greater conflicts in the world going on in my sphere of influence, and then in the greater society outside of my influence. And so it's like you latch onto these things, and I'm sure there's some principles that I would connect to, that I would relate to in the book. Is that the case?
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, the one interesting thing about it is that because it was written by a man and a woman, it's actually very much appeals to men and women, and actually across the age spectrum. We've had people in their 70s read it who love it. We've had people who are in, like middle school read and love it. So it really kind of just runs the gamut of ages and across the spectrum of male and female. So yeah, we try to make it more universal in a sense, that people a universal appeal.
I love that. So, what is the plot, and does good win?
Yeah, so I can't tell you the ending, but I mean, yeah, obviously a joke, but I would say good does triumph over evil throughout the trilogy, or by the end of the trilogy at least.
Ooh, ooh. So I sense some ups and downs. Okay, okay.
Yeah, definitely not a straight arc towards good. But yeah, so I mean, basically the plot is it is following the life of a young artist who just graduated from college at the beginning of the trilogy. She goes to art school in New York City. And by the way, we didn't actually live here at the time. We were living in upstate New York, so it's kind of funny. We didn't have direct access to these things that we were writing about, and now we do. But anyway, sorry for the aside. Yeah, so she's in New York City. She's at this fictional art school, learning how to paint and paint better. And the milieu, the outer conflict that she's within is the this dystopian society, which is essentially social Darwinism, and the best rise to the top, and everyone else is sort of forgotten about and persecuted. And by the way, if you're not in favor of the ruling party of the day, then you're also persecuted. So it's a sort of the society of extreme freedom, but also at the same time extreme lack of freedom if you oppose the philosophy that they have.
Got it.
So
Sounds
that's
nothing
really
like
kind of
today.
the yeah, exactly. Someone inspired by real events. But we actually like the anarchist of the Spanish Civil War, for example. That actually was a little bit of the inspiration of this society, to be honest to me, because that was like even more extreme than we have today, with like the violence and the
Yeah.
persecutions and the anarchy of like basically freedom and no real structure.
Well, the Spanish Civil War is an incredible example. The French Revolution is another
Yep.
example when to see two sides butt heads. And that's like the extreme of what you're talking about. If you're in the favorable party, you're okay. If you're not, I mean, you're dead, literally. So that's amazing how many real life examples we have of that. Your book feels like a story, a little bit of a dystopian story, but in real history, we have some dystopian artifacts that were very real and shaped society, the society we live in today.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Where in this process, 12 years of first draft to publishing, when did you guys start having kids?
So pretty fast. 2009 is when we were married. So a year and a half later, we had kids. So yeah, we basically had kids for the vast majority of the time that we were working on this project.
And how do you find the time, Chris? Because I love the idea of having a big project to do with your spouse to keep you connected. So the only thing, like a lot of people listening, the only thing they might do with their spouse is watch a Netflix series at night because that's all they have energy to do. But to do something productive and active with your spouse, I think can be very intriguing. But the reality of life with work and family is tough. So how did you make time for this? Because the time didn't give itself to you. You had to manufacture at that time very intentionally, or else you wouldn't have had the first book. You certainly wouldn't have had the next two books.
Right, exactly. So like I said, it took 12 years to get to the point where we were happy with it and we published the book. So, in that sense, we were able to kind of eat the elephant one bite at a time, thankfully. However, I will say that we wrote and published the next two books in 9 months each. So during that period, it was like from Genesis to writing to, publishing and all of that very quickly. We didn't want to leave the reader hanging, so
Was that
we
because you had the process and you had kind of the inspiration of the fleshed out story at that point? Or how did 12 years for one and then 9 months for each of the second, how did you get those second ones turned around so quick?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you're saying. Like we knew we felt like at least that we knew how to write at that point. So so it wasn't like draft after draft after draft. We had a good idea of what we wanted it to say. Yeah, we had already kind of thought over those years, I guess, a little bit about where the story might go. Didn't have the whole thing mapped out, but we had time to kind of have this percolate. But yeah, we just had a process down. We had everything down. And by the way, we didn't really watch a lot of Netflix. So in fact, we didn't watch any Netflix or really like a lot of the extra little things that people do on their spare time. They're more like consumption hobbies. Our hobby was more creative hobby. So like we were spending time.
Whoa.
We were spending time. I mean, nothing against consumption hobbies, but really trying to like. And obviously, you have to read if you want to write. You have to consume if you want to produce. But our hobby was focused on production, focused on creativity, rather than simply passivity and receiving, so to speak.
So I want to talk about consumption hobby versus what was the word you used? Consumption versus what type of hobby?
But yeah, I guess creativity hobby or creative
Creativity
hobby.
hobby. I love that idea that seems to distinguish it so clearly because, of course, sometimes you just want to consume and you want to relax and chill. And to
Yep.
produce, you need to consume. You can only give what you have.
Hmm.
But so much of us, and maybe I'm speaking for myself, to be creative is hard. You have to be intentional about it. And if you wouldn't mind sharing, I'm thinking rubber to the road. What does that mean? So you watch no Netflix. You say, did you guys plan it out? Did you say, hey, we want to do one chapter this month? Do you say to what's your wife's name?
Cassandra.
Cassandra, hey, you take this part, I'll take this part. Like like actually you said you had it all down. What does that mean? How did you have it down?
Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of it was what you were just saying, where we would say, okay, for this section, but so I guess the first process was for the second and third, at least, the entire plot written out in a Google Doc and like, however many pages it is to summarize the plot. So like we had that down first. So it's like each chapter, each section was mapped out in like a summary format. So obviously we discussed that, but together we created this, document that had the plot, and then from there it was kind of like divide and conquer. Okay, well this chapter is more on a male point of view, so I'll write it, or maybe this other one's more female point of view, and Cassandra will write it, or whatever. It kind of just going from there, and like and then we'd edit each other's work essentially.
Yeah.
So somebody would write something, and then pretty quickly after that, the other person would read it, comment on it, leave comments. It's just a lot of Google Docs work essentially. So that's kind of how we went back and forth in these things. And I know you said at one point you're interested in potentially writing a book. So I know it sounds like it'd probably be more of a solo authorship, but still it's the same process. You just have this document, you're going back and you're reviewing and editing it, you're having other people give you feedback, etc.
Yeah, well, there's so many people that help with my transcripts right now. So I feel like maybe I make the initial draft, the initial idea, and then I run it through what I consider the gauntlet, all the people I get feedback and counsel from, and then it kind of gets chiseled into the final format to make sure there's a coherent arc and everything. I mean, how cool is that to get to do that with your wife? So all these years later, would you say the book made you guys closer?
Yeah, I mean, totally. It's one of those things that when you have a shared mission and project, so to speak. Obviously, we already do with raising children and running a household, and et cetera. Our marriage is obviously a shared mission. But when you have something on top of that that's like very tangible, and you see these books on the shelf, and we wrote them, and we worked on these things together. So it's like, yeah, it just really, really, binds you together in a way that I think, like, like I said, passive or consumption hobbies, I cannot do that as much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I always like to do isms on the show, and it's always hard to do an ism when someone's name ends in an S, a Chrisism. But one of my big takeaways personally is have a creative hobby with my spouse. And if someone's listening and you don't, try to figure one out. I think of some of our highlights in marriage have been painting different rooms in our house. We'll put on an audiobook or a podcast. We listened to the whole Harry Potter series while we repainted our house when we bought it 9 years ago. And it's like, when we're being creative and productive together, yeah, we've got a family and we are on the same mission of life, but sometimes that can feel like we're running parallel to each other, like the letter H. And it's nice to do activities where you feel like the letter A, where you're like bumping into each other, you're working together on something that feels very deliberately together, because it doesn't always feel togetherness, especially the further you get into marriage. It can feel more like a business operation than a love encounter. So I love that idea of a creative hobby together, or something where you're producing something together instead of just consuming, where you're both receiving, but individually. Like Netflix, we're both watching, we might be sitting next to each other, our hands are in the same bowl of popcorn, but like you go to bed at night and it's like, are we closer because of that or not? And like, I watch Netflix. I love a good show. I'm actually been bigger on PBS Masterpiece for the last couple of years because I like their timepieces. But nevertheless, same thing. You know, you'll go through a month and it's like, we crushed that series and it was really fun, like crushing a good book. But wow, did it bring me closer to my spouse who I've dedicated my whole life to, you know? So I love that idea. That's a big criticism I'm pulling out of this. So, Chris, what were the biggest takeaways for you personally, you as a family, in putting this book out? What were the main peak moments and what were the big valley moments for you throughout the process?
Yeah, so I guess peak moment would include definitely just obviously especially the launch of the first book, but the launch of all three books. So it's kind of like that culmination of like all this effort, all this work, all this editing, all this the feedback that we received, and getting it to the point where, you know, this is actually on Amazon. People are writing reviews of it, and we have like what you call a street team, which is basically like 20 or so people that agree to like all leave reviews on the first day to kind of help out with the algorithm and so on. But essentially, like, yeah, just that launch day is huge, I think, for any author. And then, you know, I guess the rest of it is maybe not the rest of it, but, you know, maybe just like, you know, being stuck, writer's block, you know, like being stuck on the scene or being stuck on this like part of the book where it's just like, how do I want to, I mean, how do I want to actually write this? How do I want this to come out? How, you know, et cetera. But I will say that writing it with your spouse or another co-author helps tremendously, because if you don't have an idea for how to write this scene, then maybe she does, and, or, you know, vice versa. So, you know, you can kind of work your way through writer's block because maybe not both people are blocked. So, it's really a, you know, it's kind of just an interesting and helpful way of writing that obviously is not the way everyone does it or most people do it, but it's just a helpful way for me at least to get that way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, did you get any reviews that kind of crushed your spirit? All that work, all that effort, all that creativity. Did anyone knock you sideways with like a left hook that you weren't expecting that took the wind out of you?
Yeah, we did get a couple of those. I'm trying to think. It wasn't. I don't think it was right away. It was like maybe like a year later or something like this. There'd be a couple of people who like, you know, maybe thought it was like too preachy or too you know, just not realistic enough, or I don't know. A couple of different criticisms.
Yeah.
Thankfully, like, you know, the vast majority of the reviews, I think there's like, I don't know, I don't even remember now. It's like 85 reviews on Amazon. It's not a ton, but, you know, enough to kind of give you a
Yeah, but that's a
sense.
pretty large sample size. I mean, that's not your kids leaving reviews for this thing. You know, that's a
Right.
wide audience.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We did get a fair amount of reaction and good reads and Amazon. But yeah, so like of those 85 reviews, I think it's like, yeah, there's maybe like one or two that are sort of negative. So thankfully it's not the majority, thankfully.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of research out on The most joy you feel during an experience is actually in the experience. It's not the result. So you want to write a book. The most joy isn't actually once the book is completed. It's as you're writing the book and you always look back on the journey to the destination. You want to
Yeah.
lose the belly fat. Well, yeah, you end up losing the belly fat and that's fine, but it's like all the discipline and all the moments of exercise and fitness it took waking up early to do that hard task. And I'm thinking for your ideation sessions and writer's block and like I feel like those are the moments you think back to where those are the real peak moments in hindsight that you overcame those obstacles, that you stuck
Right.
to
Right.
the task for so long. I mean, 12 years working on a project, it probably felt for a long time like this is never going to happen. This is never going to happen. And then pop, it does. And what a gift. So I think for the listeners, it's just a good reminder that enjoy the process. Don't just try and get quick dopamine hits, which is exactly what our phone is. The scrolling is the quick dopamine hits.
Mhm.
Set your sights on things that are enduring and work towards those things because those are lifelong and maybe even eternal, as opposed to, I'm going to get this real quick because I want to grab it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like setting our eyes, reflecting so we know what we actually want to do. Like Seven Habits would say, make sure your ladder's against the right wall so that when you put your head down and you climb up the ladder for the majority of your life, you get to the top and you finally pick your head up, you look around and you're like, oh crap, my ladder was against the wrong wall this whole time. So it's like reflect, set your aim, and then pursue things that are enduring and lasting for you in your state of life and in your situation. I just love that you stuck to that.
Yeah.
So, flipping, I feel like some of this runs parallel with your expertise in marketing. And some guy said this about you. He said, Chris is both big picture and detail oriented simultaneously. He has an incredible tactical lens and leans in with a helping hand. What's interesting to me about that is I know a lot of big picture people, and I'm sure people listening think of themselves as a big picture person, or they know the person with the ideas. And then there's a lot of people listening that do the day to day work of the big picture people. How do you keep both of those things in your hand at the same time, Chris? How do you set the vision and do the work? Am I even thinking about it in the right way, or am I missing the mark? I don't even know if I described that right.
Yeah. No, I think that's, yeah, I think essentially, in my view, it's if you're going to be doing the tactics, it's good to at least have a hand or a piece in mind of the big picture so that you're, like you said, you're not working really hard to climb the ladder and then realize it's in the wrong spot. So I feel like obviously not everyone is meant to be like CEO or CMO or whatever, uh, and the leader of the whole team or of the whole company with that sort of big picture vision. However, I feel like everyone, and an old boss of mine used this phrase, which may be familiar with, of everyone should be the CEO of their own area. Um,
Mm.
and I really like this phrase because it kind of enables, or it alludes to the autonomy that everyone should have a kind of over their own responsibilities. And who is the CEO but someone who has the big picture vision and who knows what's going on and who has strategy and who has ideas. And typically the CEO maybe could execute on a lot of these things but just doesn't have the time. So I feel like those who are actually executing on these ideas do have the time to execute on them, but they should also have their, I guess this other phrase, like have your head in the clouds and your feet firmly planted on the ground at the same time. So it's kind of like, have the vision, have the big picture, know where you're going, but then in many cases, do the work and I just pay attention to the details. And that's the other thing. I mean, it's through the small things of life. I think maybe you've alluded to this on this podcast already from what I've heard, but it's through the small details of life that we encounter what we really should be the eternal things in life, as you were saying, the everlasting things. So it's like, how do you how do you find happiness, find fulfillment? It has to be in the little details, not in maybe something too abstract or too big, too heroic. It's the heroic is the daily life.
Yeah, it's totally the small things. I feel like I've hit on that a lot in the podcast. It is waking up when your alarm goes off. It is stretching in the morning because you know that's what you need to do to feel great. It is eating healthy. It is looking your kids in the eye, even though you've got 1,000 things on your mind. It is being present at work and putting your best foot forward, no matter how menial the task feels. It is coming home and being present for dinner, even though you're dog tired. And it is engaging with the person at the grocery store, even though you got to go there to get 2 lemons and a lime and a red pepper for dinner. Being there, the small things are what make up the heroic and the big moments. And if you miss the small moments, the big moments just simply don't happen. You can't jump over the small things and just get to the big things. So I love that point there. And I've never connected what you said. I like what your CEO said at one point is everyone should be the CEO of their own vertical or business segment. I say something similar to the people on my team. You need to manage your work like it's your business. So you need foundational procedures and processes to run your whole business. And think of it, when you move on to the next job, can your business continue running with someone new in charge of it? Because my goal, my hope is that everyone I work with continues to move onward and upward wherever they want to go in their career. I mean, my real hope is that they just stay with me forever, because that's the most fun, is when you really get to know people and work with them for long, extended periods of time. But the reality is, a lot of people have a lot of dreams, and I want to see those people's dreams fulfilled. So it's like, I want you to excel, but create a business, whether you're a customer success manager, whether you're a salesperson, no matter what you're doing, a sales manager, create your business so that when you leave, it's very organized and it can almost run by itself. The new person comes in and they just grab the levers and they add their style, their personality, but they just keep plowing the field with the business that you've set up. And I love the idea of the tactician at the head, but also the person on the ground, your head in the clouds, but your feet on the ground. It's like you can be the tactician and the practitioner in the same domain on the same job, working within a complex business. So, Chris, you're opening my eyes. I got to unpack that a little bit, but I love that idea. Who do you see, the people you work with, who do you enjoy? What types of people do you enjoy working with the most?
First of all, just people that don't take themselves too seriously, I guess, is one. So, that kind of covers a lot of things, but, people have just a good sense of humor and good, affability and, just, yeah, people who are humble, etc. So I think that's probably maybe criteria number one. And then also, yeah, just like kind of the dedication to the small things, like you were saying, or what we were just saying. People that want to have achieved the big goals and the lofty goals and everything like that, which obviously is very important, but who realize that the way you achieve these big lofty goals is to achieve these micro goals along the way. And that every single goal you meet and every time you do those things in consistency, is how you win. So,
Do you have any secrets in your sauce to being serious without taking yourself too seriously? I feel like some people might be listening and saying, well, I take my job very seriously. I spend 80% of my life there. At least that's what I'm thinking. And it's like, how do you take your work very seriously, but also, like you're saying, come at it with a sense of humility and just lightheartedness, if you will.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. That I don't mean like be flippant, irreverent, and ignoring your duties, derelicting your duties. So like that's not what I mean by not taking yourself too seriously. So I guess it's more like not taking yourself too seriously, but taking your work seriously. So So you take you
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. You're onto something. Wait, keep going. Keep going. I'm marking that. I love that.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm getting at is like, you don't take yourself too seriously. So it's more like you're not is I guess it really gets at humility, because humility is really just knowing yourself and knowing the place that you have in the universe or in the world or in the order of things. And I guess it's like a kind of certain kind of honesty. Humility is basically like a certain kind of honesty with recognizing who we are, and not pride tends to do the opposite, where it's like lying about how important we are to ourselves. And so this kind of humility is not taking yourself too seriously, so that you're basically like kind of hide and disappear, and you try to accomplish the goal and have the team be successful. But it's less important that you're on a pedestal, you're winning the award, or you're doing whatever.
Yeah. This phrase comes to mind. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Like you just said, what's the main goal for the team? How do we achieve that without making sure I'm the guy on the pedestal at the end, but that we achieve the target? And in humility, I've got a lot of great gifts and I need to contribute that. But let's not put my ego out front instead of my talent and skill that I have to contribute here. I love that
Exactly.
idea. I love that idea. Chris, I want to rewind here. Childhood. What type of childhood did you have? Is there any connections between your childhood and the author and marketing man you are today? Is there any link there?
So probably more of a connection on the author piece,
Yeah.
because actually growing up, my goal was to be an author, and my wife's goal was to be an author when she was a child too. But what's interesting is that neither of us knew that about ourselves or about each other until after we were married. So so both of us like had this aspiration of like, I want to be a published author when I grow up. I remember like thinking to myself, like, how do I get my books published? Because I would just write these like little books, or whatever, comics and books and things when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was like, how do I get this children's book published as a child, as like a 10-year-old? And I was thinking, I kept looking around. I was like, oh, there aren't really that many books in the library, at least, that are like, published by a 10-year-old. So like, it was kind of frustrating to me, because I was like, I really want to be a published author. That was my dream. And like I said, my wife, same thing. And so, but yeah, we didn't really discuss this, didn't really know about each other. And then we married, and then we realized, hey, let's write a book. Like, we just realized that's what that's what we were meant to do. So
No way. How cool is that? That is, it's just incredible to see the fruition of a lifelong goal. Like, you're a child, you want to write a book, you get married, you don't even know that about your wife, and then
wow.
and then you actually make it happen. I just did a post about how if you're not passionate about something in life right now, identify something you can get passionate about and then start taking agency in that thing, because it's not going to happen by accident. And there can be so much juice in that squeeze, if you will, of having a passion, and it just complements your life. It makes you so much more full in everything you're doing if you feel that passion. And I was exhorting my audience, man, if you're not passionate about something, find it, think about it, take time to identify it, and then build it into your day, your week, your month, your year, so you can practice it. And I think you're such a great example of that, Chris, which is why I was so excited to have you on the show. Is like, you are a guy actually living this out. And not only you, but you're incorporating your wife into it, or maybe I should say she's incorporating you into it in the midst of a busy schedule, a busy family. And you've used technology like Google Docs, where it's cloud based. You can work on it separately at the same time. You can add your components to it. Like, you can get creative to find ways to make these things work. And that's inspirational and aspirational for me as a married man of 11 years with a couple kids, of like, okay, yes, Chris can do it. I can do it.
Awesome. Yeah.
So let me bridge into the last series of questions here, Chris. And this is a tough one. Are you fulfilled?
Yeah, so I think the best answer for me personally, and probably for anyone who's being honest, is that yes and no, because or it depends is the other classic answer. But yeah, I think more yes and no, because I feel very fulfilled by the rich life that I have with I have 6 children. I obviously my wife and our writing projects and all the other things that we're doing. You probably see the banjo and the guitar on the wall too. So I like to
I've been
in my
dying to
not
ask
not
about the banjo.
in my non-existent free time trying to learn the banjo. But anyway, so yeah, kind of this rich life that I have and the relationships I have and all the etc. It leads me to feel very fulfilled, and yet I feel like fulfillment is always a moving target. So like you can never achieve. I think maybe someone said this on one of your other guests, but it's like it's an ideal in a sense, or a virtue or something, where like the more you attain, the closer you get to it, the more you realize that you have more to go and to reach this goal, to reach this fulfillment, which is really I think only possible afterlife, essentially. So like it's just not something you can be completely fulfilled with in this life, but obviously it can be more fulfilled than less. So it's yeah, it's a yes and no for me.
Yeah. And what do you do to keep pursuing that fulfillment? Because I would say, I think my current definition of perfection is pursuing perfection is perfection, because you can never attain the ideal. You're always working towards it. So the pursuit of it is the thing itself, because we'll never get there while we're alive, at least. So, what do you do on a regular basis to pursue fulfillment and to reflect and identify where you want to aim and target your life?
Yeah, so first of all, I aspire to spend about 40 minutes total of time in meditation slash prayer every day. And this is just like time of silence. Maybe I'll have something to read or something to think about. But like 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon or evening, I've got either a podcast going, or I've got a book, or some sort of material that will help me. But it's not all reading and listening. It's like to a podcast. I mean, it's like some of that, some of silence, some of that, some of silence. So I guess these like periods of silence that really fill me up in a sense and connect me with what basically with God, and with kind of what my ultimate fulfillment I feel is and will be. So that those like grounding periods of meditation and prayer, like kind of sine qua non, without which no fulfillment.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something I've been leaning into very hard is reflection. And the Christian, the Catholic might see it as prayer time. The non-believer may see it as meditation time. I think all these things are good to center yourself and to think about, where am I going? You have to pull yourself out of the noise. And I was just with my father-in-law, who's an executive coach, and he's coached a lot of the Fortune 500 CEOs, CFOs, men and women in the C-suite. And he tells me that he tells them, whether they're faithful believers or not, the most peace you can find is in an adoration chapel. So if you're feeling like there's a lot of noise in your brain, go sit in an adoration chapel. Time slows down. You can't really achieve that type of silence anywhere else. And he says some of them have done it. And even though they're not like practicing, that's a spot they go on a regular basis, maybe not daily, but weekly or monthly. And so I love that idea of finding time for the silence. Chris, you're a guy with 6 kids and a wife and a lot going on. You can find the time. It will not come to you. It will not give itself to you. Time does not give itself to you. You have to pay yourself first, as I've said in 1,000 other episodes. You have to budget that time for yourself. Make it a priority. If you've got a wife and kids, you have to talk about it with your spouse to figure out when you can make it happen. And You have to prioritize it for them so they can get filled up as well. I want my wife to be the type of woman that reflects and is intentional about her life. And I want her to want that for me, and she does. So yeah, this is something that I don't think, would you say you fell into it? I don't think you say you fell into this. Like you have to be very deliberate about it. Is that fair?
Yeah, essentially it wasn't really part of my life until some like middle of my college years, and I just sort of met some people that were into this sort of thing, really taught me about it, helped me along the way. And since like 2006 I started just doing this like every day, so it's like almost 20 years of daily meditation time. So yeah.
Crazy. It's funny, you and me have that in common, Chris, where I really found my faith and reflection and prayer time and all that came in college, which seems to be the opposite of when it happens for a lot of people. But for me, that was a huge inflection point in my life where I realized I needed it. And then throughout life, I've had some major valleys, and having that to fall back on, that reflection, that pulling myself out of the world, out of the struggle, out of the acuteness of the moment, to reflect, point myself in a direction and go, my gosh, days, weeks, and months are so much better, even in the really long, hard periods of life. I mean, my hardest period of life was 3 years, and it was really hard. And I think many people have those. I'm not unique in that. But being able to pull yourself out of it, reflect, understand where you're going is so, so helpful. So, Chris, you get the last word. Where can people find you? Any advice in all your experience and all your wisdom that you want to shed before you dive off the fulfillment project?
Yeah, so folks can find us on spellmanbooks.com is probably the best place, but I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And then, in terms of parting words of wisdom, if I have them, would be, just kind of look, not ignoring the little things. I think maybe I would stress that point once again and kind of elaborate that, I found that life is made up of these little things, and the big things come and go. But, it's really just the everyday consistency of, like you were saying, waking up in the morning on time, or doing these meditations or whatever. And just come up with like this sort of plan for your life of like, these are the things I want to do every day, every week, every month. And, just really stick to it, and, kind of see that is where you will find joy, is in the fulfillment of a plan.
Chris Spellman, what a treat. Thank you for coming on Fulfillment Project. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. If you found something valuable, if you made it this far, I certainly hope you did. If someone comes to mind, please share it with them right now. If you're listening on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, please give us a positive rating, leave a comment. It really helps the algorithm distribute us to more ears and more listeners. For more content, you can subscribe on my Substack, the premium version. I put out self-reflection guides for every episode to help you internalize the major takeaways from each show. How do I take Chris Spellman's wisdom and make it my own? I'm also about to wrap up season 1 here. I'm working on a workbook where I summarize each of the episodes, each of the key takeaways with a few reflection points. Something my father-in-law, I just referenced him, he says, ink is better than memory. So I wanted a spot for the listeners that have followed along to ink down some of their favorite takeaways from each episode. It's going to turn into a nice coffee table book. I think it'll be really beautiful. Anyway, that'll be available to all of my Substack premium subscribers, and then to everyone else for a price, baby. So anyway, thank you for tuning in today. I love you guys. See you next time.